the crisis in the border in Del Rio. We heard DHS say they're going to continue expulsions under Title 42. So what is the White House's message to Haitian immigrants seeking asylum? Is there a place for them?
Well, I think it's important for people to understand a couple of the components of what's happening right now on the ground. One, we extended TPS several months ago and again reevaluated to ensure that we were taking into account what was happening on the ground in Haiti. So that I understand, but that does apply to people who are here who arrived before a certain date, and I think that's an important component of what's happening. If you're talking about the situation on the ground in Del Rio, one, it's a challenging situation. It's devastating to watch this footage. I think it's important, though, for people to also know that what we're trying to do is also protect people. One, we've been conveying that this is not the time to come. We have been implementing Title 42. That's not just about people in the United States. That's also about protecting migrants who would come in mass groups and be in mass groups. We are also surging resources and taking a multi-pronged approach. We've been working with the American Red Cross to bring in much needed resources. We've worked with World Central Kitchen to bring in meals, and we have been expediting repatriation flights, both to a range of countries in South and Central America, where people may have come from if they can be accepted back, and some back to Haiti. That is what our focus is on at this point in time. And our message continues to be, as you've heard Secretary Mayorkas convey, now is not the time to come. For a range of reasons, including we don't have the immigration system up and running in the way we want, including there is still a pandemic and Title 42 remains in place. And these are the steps that we're taking in part to protect the border communities as well as the migrants themselves. As it relates to individuals who are coming across the border, wherever they're coming from, whatever country they're coming from, Title 42 remains in place. There are a range of programs that people who are in the country can apply for or may be eligible for, including TPS for Haiti, which is something that we still are continuing to look at and review. The Secretary of State, the Secretary of Homeland Security are constantly assessing circumstances on the ground that would necessitate a TPS designation for any country. And they've obviously made a couple of designations over the course of the last couple of months as it relates to Haiti.
And no matter whether it's the people who left, the Haitians that left in 2010 and traveled to South America and now trying to travel here, or the ones who left after this earthquake, either way, what is there for them to go back to when these planes are taking them back? The nation is in unrest. The president was assassinated. There are gangs that people are scared of. Democratic rule is not necessarily in place. The people are calling, particularly those here in this nation, are calling for the elections not to be held, on time because of unrest there. And then you also have the issue of the earthquakes. So what is there to go back to? What are you deporting them back to?
Well, April, I will say that our objective and our focus is not only in implementing current immigration policies. We have also been working to provide a range of assistance, working closely with officials from the government as individuals are going back to Haiti, to provide a range of financial assistance, to provide a range of technical assistance. That is ongoing. And we certainly support and want to be good actors in supporting Haiti during a very difficult time, as you noted, with a government that is still working to get back to a point of stability with recovery from an earthquake. And that's why we have a range of programs, options, as well as financial support in place.
I was talking to Haitian American advocates this weekend. They say that deporting people back to Haiti is like dropping people into a burning house. This idea that the country is just not in a place where it can handle this. Haitian officials have said, can you please have a pause on this? Is there any sort of discussion being made to make exemptions for some of these migrants? If so, who would those people be? Or are all of these people just going to end up dropped back in Haiti?
Well, first, I would say, we are constantly assessing circumstances on the ground. Obviously, the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Homeland Security are the ones who would assess circumstances like TPS status, which would be one that we granted and adjusted over the course of the last several months to account for circumstances on the ground in Haiti. I can't make any predictions of that, but I would just reiterate that obviously our objective here is to not just work to address the circumstances which are very difficult in Del Rio, but also to continue to work with the officials in Haiti to improve the conditions, to provide assistance. We're doing all of these pieces at the same time. It is not just one at the same time, but I can't predict for you what an assessment would look like or what the outcome of that assessment would look like.
On the photo, I know you said that you're still assessing it, but just to add, if this is what we see, is it the president's stance or the White House's stance that whoever these border agents are using what seems to be whips on migrants, that they would be fired or at least never be able to do that again?
Of course they should never be able to do it again. I don't know what the circumstances would be. It's obviously horrific, the footage. I don't have any more information on it, so let me venture to do that, and we'll see if there's more to convey. Karen, go ahead. I think, April, I absolutely understand your question. I think I've been very clear about how horrific the footage is. I don't have more information. As a U.S. official, I have a responsibility to get more context and information.
Some of the Haitian migrants at the border told VOA that they were treated worse than their Spanish-speaking counterparts, that they were denied the chance to change clothing, that they were not given adequate information on their deportation or their deportation status. And we had one guy say to us, it was like being in jail. No food, nothing. You know, what is your response to this? Is this policy? And then just secondly, Haitian Americans say that this mass deportation and this treatment of people at the border is the president going back on campaign promises to their community.
In which campaign promise?
To help them kind of get over some of the challenges facing Haiti and also to help people migrate to the U.S.
Well, the president committed to extending temporary protected status to Haiti, which is something he did. And we extended that to a longer period of time to account for the turmoil on the ground following the assassination on the ground of their leader. So that was the campaign commitment that he made. But I think I can assure people that that is not our policy. Obviously, any circumstance where individuals are not treated humanely, whether they are coming to our border or not, is not in line with the Biden administration policies. This is clearly a very challenging circumstance on the ground, one where we have worked under our Department of Homeland Security to expedite surge resources, which includes World Central Kitchen bringing in meals, the American Red Cross bringing in much needed resources to the population. These are all steps we've taken from a humanitarian perspective. It does not mean that every individual, that there aren't individuals, as you evidenced, that didn't have experiences where they did not have access to these resources. But our policy is to provide resources, is to treat people humanely. But we also need to implement what is our law and what is our what that is implementing Title 42 and continuing to ensure that people who are not coming here lawfully are sent back to the countries they came from.
We are in the midst of a pandemic and a critical migration challenge. We continue to exercise the Centers for Disease Control's Title 42 authority. Title 42 is not an immigration authority, but a public health authority to protect the American public, to protect the communities along the border, and to protect the migrants themselves. CBP has surged 600 agents, officers, and DHS volunteer force personnel to the Del Rio sector to enhance our operational capabilities. If additional staff is needed, more will be sent. Border Patrol is coordinating with ICE and the U.S. Coast Guard to move individuals from Del Rio to other processing locations, including approximately 3,500 over the last few days and 3,000 today, in order to ensure that migrants are swiftly taken into custody, processed, and removed from the United States consistent with our laws and policies. We have brought in personnel from the Department of Health and Human Services to address medical needs and supplies. We've also worked with the American Red Cross to bring in supplies and much-needed resources to the population.